Well, hello, online church. Hope we're all doing well this morning. Hope you're enjoying a tea, a coffee, maybe a little biscuit. Maybe you've got your breakfast croissant ready to go this morning, but it's great to have you here as well. And so if you're new, if you're visiting, we're so glad you're here and you're experiencing church with us for the first time. And we've got some exciting things coming up in our service. We're going to be hearing from Kristyn, who's one of our pastors here at the church, and she's going to be sharing, continuing in a series on emotionally healthy followers. How do we partner emotional health with spiritual health? And so we're looking forward to hearing that later. We're also going to be having a Northside story straight after this, where we're going to be hearing from a clinical psychologist, and actually how does the emotional health we've been learning about in church, how does that tie into things that are going on in the real world too? But we also have Cara, and Louise, who are our online moderators and online hosts in the chat. So if you have questions or need any support, feel free to chat to them. They'll be chatting to you throughout the service this morning, and we'd love to get you connected further. Maybe find out how you can experience church in 3D in the room with us one day too. But stay with us, online church. Maybe go grab yourself a drink, the second round of drinks, before we continue in our service. But it's great to have you here. Daniela, how are you?
A bit nervous.
That's fine. You're on. You're there. Don't worry. And so maybe just to share with people who don't know who you are here, and just share with us, what is it when you're not here at church on a Sunday? What is it you do when you're week to week? What is it you get up to in your life?
So I'm a clinical psychologist, and I guess maybe I know what that means, but maybe everyone else doesn't. But basically, clinical psychologists, they do like a 4-year undergrad at university in psychology, and then they go on to kind of specialize in the clinical psychology. So that's a 2-year master's, and then 2 years of like placements, and then you become a clinical psychologist. So in my everyday at the moment, I lecture at Macquarie Uni, so that's my full-time job. It's probably different to what every other clinical psychologist does, but it probably looks like creating lectures, giving lectures to honours and master's students who are training to specialise in clinical psychology. But I guess more interestingly, probably before I did that, I was working with people, usually giving therapy and things like that. And the area that I worked in a lot was complex trauma. So I've worked in like foster care, hospitals and things like that. Really working with people who've had really tough experiences, usually growing up or in their teens. So that's what I did before, and now it's a bit different. I'm teaching a lot.
I remember when I heard what you did, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, you're doing all this. It's incredible, isn't it? And so as a clinical psychologist and someone who's in church and someone who's a Christian, how have you seen the discussion about kind of emotional health, as we've been exploring, right, for this past kind of 6 weeks and a couple more weeks to come? How have you seen it kind of play out in the church world or in the Christian world before? How have you kind of seen that play out?
I think before the church, or churches in general, a lot of churches probably followed with the positive psychology movement a lot, which was kind of that you show that you're happy, you pursue happiness, and put on that front of happiness and maybe ignore the other emotions. And I think growing up, I definitely felt like that was very common. And I guess for me, as a psychologist looking at it, it's a little bit sad because as humans, we are meant to experience a wide range of emotions. And I think it really allows us to get closer to people. But also, if you look in the Bible, and I think we've been learning a lot about that the last couple of weeks, most of the characters in the Bible, but even Jesus, had complex emotions, and they don't often shy away from them. So I think I definitely noticed that positive movement sometimes made maybe people feel like some Christians may be inauthentic, or like, oh, their life's perfect and mine's not, so maybe we can't be friends or we can't be close. So it was really, I guess, refreshing coming here and actually talking about emotions. And I guess I love talking about emotions. I'm always making people do that. So I really like that. It allows for that connection and I think authenticity, because we are very complex and we feel a lot all the time.
Yeah, totally. I think that's so true, right? Is that we can, I don't know, I've experienced it too, where you can just, told to either put on the facade maybe sometimes of just constantly the positive energy, positive. But like you said, like we've been created and designed in a way where we do have that complex range of emotions. And so you kind of touched on it there that, through this series we've explored some either Bible characters or through some topics or themes that kind of showed that kind of complex range of emotions. Has there been any that particularly stood out for you that you kind of see play out in clinical psychology a lot, or in the kind of conversations you've had before in therapy, or in the way that you're lecturing now? Is there anything over these kind of last 6 weeks through our series that you've kind of see play out more?
I think it's relevant. All the different messages over the last few weeks are pretty relevant because, as I said, we're all pretty complex beings. I think one of the weeks, I can't remember how many weeks ago it was, but talking about like the origins of our emotions, or that our family of origin and how that impacts how we feel. For me, that's a really key part of when I'm doing therapy with people, because often we think that what's happening right now is upsetting us because of something right now, but what I usually see and what we learn about is that it's often related to something that's happened a long time ago, or patterns that have happened in our families. And so for me, I think it's really interesting when we were looking at the different generations, was it Joseph? And his ancestry, and how like the patterns can just get repeated throughout different families, and it really takes one person to kind of shift their attitude and start to introspect and reflect and change things to become more emotionally healthy. I found that pretty relevant, because that's what we're usually teaching people in therapy, to kind of look at their history, look at themselves, and then decide to make that change, that I'm not going to repeat the same behavioral patterns or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So I remember, when I initially explored that family of origin stuff, it was such an eye-opener for me as well, and something I'd never even considered before, right? And yet it's something that, like you said, maybe in the church world before we just don't even consider, but clearly it's something that's talked about a lot in clinical psychology, and so great to explore that here. And so a final question for you, Danielle. You've been great. It's great to hear your insight on this. And so, how has your faith shaped how you practice psychology, and how either maybe the ways you lecture, or maybe the ways you've delivered therapy? And I guess to follow on that, like, what has it taught you about God's heart for emotional health?
I think when you get taught psychology, it's very secular, and obviously they don't really talk about religion or anything else like that, and they kind of maybe purposely make it very separate. But I think the more I've learned, the more it kind of confirms what I already had or believe, because one of, I guess, a really big, he's a child psychiatrist that's shaped a lot of the work in trauma, which is the area that I'm in. He talks about they're discovering kind of more research about how children are born to be attached and to be loved, and this is what we need. And I think for many years, psychology kind of ignored that, and it was more about we want the behaviors to match what we need the behaviors to be. And so for me, there's even a book now written called Born for Love, and I think for me it's almost ironic, because in the Bible and what I've grown up always believing is that that's exactly what we're born for, and it's such an important component. So I think it's funny, the new research coming out and the new ways of looking at things, it's already affirming what I guess I have faith in and we believe at the moment. And I think the idea and the concepts, like we're all flawed, we all have our issues, we're complex, but we love each other anyway, and God loves us anyway. And I think, I always try and remind myself about that.
Yeah, that's so cool. I was not aware of that. Born for Love.
It's a good book.
Amazing. But there's so interesting, the clear parallels, right, between kind of our psychological, emotional health, and either if you've grown up in church or followed Jesus, what we read in the Bible and what we know about who God to be. So interesting, the contrasts and the similarities, right, that are there. And so why don't we give it up for Daniela, everyone? I'm sure you'd be happy to talk maybe a bit. I don't want to put you on the spot after the service and has any more questions about stuff. But as Daniel heads back to his seat, we're actually going to get ready to head into the message. And so if you want to turn your eyes to the screen, we've got a short bumper, and then we're going to be hearing from Kristyn, who's going to continue in our series on emotionally.
I loved before when Jordan asked how you were all doing, and when he asked how many of you are busy. I actually was also shocked with how many of you didn't put up your hand for busy. Because if you asked me right now how I am or how I'm doing, I'm pretty sure you would catch me saying, I am so busy, or I am feeling really overwhelmed, or it's just a crazy period of life. And so I'm not really sure if many of you are really honest, or maybe you are all on holidays, or how many of you are retired that your life just is not busy. I know 2 of you have come back from holidays, so hopefully you're not busy. But I was really surprised that many of you didn't say that. And so I think if maybe we scratch beneath the surface a little bit, I think a few more of you might actually say that you're really busy. And maybe your life kind of looks like my life, in which it's like what my computer kind of looks like at the moment. Zach was trying to do something on my computer this week, and he was like, Mum, how many things have you got open on your computer? He's like, you've got like all of these documents and all of these tabs on your like internet browser open. Like, what is going on? I'm like, isn't that just normal? This is how many things I'm working on. This is how many things I'm thinking about and like researching and doing. But it's probably not how we're meant to live life, hey? Or we might even say that phrase of, I'm just running from one thing to the next. I'm just running from this to that. Or if you're like me, it's like, I'm just picking up this kid, going to drop them home, pick up the next kid, drop them at that thing, then come back, pick up that kid, and then go drop off that kid and then pick them up. And I think somehow, amongst all of that, I've got 3 kids at home at some point by the end of the night, hopefully. In fact, I actually think that sometimes in our culture that we actually wear that badge of I'm busy as a badge of honour. That when we ask people, how are you doing? And we go, I'm busy. We say it with such pride. And we say it with such like, I've got something to value because I'm busy. But I just don't know if that's actually how we're meant to be doing. Because if we're really honest with ourselves, when we actually say we are busy, we actually can feel like we are drowning in it all. If you're really true about how you're feeling, when we say we're really busy, it can feel like life is being stuck in deep, open water. And we're not drowning, but we're barely staying afloat. We're treading water. We're exhausted. We're surrounded by waves of busyness, distractions, and constant demands. And it's overwhelming. We're just surviving and we're not thriving. And in that, we also feel really disconnected from God. And you know what? All we want is some relief. All we want is something to just help us get through. All we want is someone to throw us a life ring. Does that sound like where anyone else is right now? That's where definitely I am at the moment. And so this morning, I want to share with you God's life-saving ring to this feeling of it's all too much. You see, as Jordan and Daniela were expressing, we're in the middle of a series called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, in which we are looking at the fact that you can't be spiritually mature if we're emotionally immature. And when we are busy and we're staying busy and we are just going through the motions, we're adding this and this to our life and we're running from one thing to another, do you know the first thing to go in that is our emotional health? The first thing to go in that is the way in which we show kindness and happiness and joy and peace and patience. It's the first thing to go. So if busyness means that we are emotionally unhealthy, then busyness also means that we're spiritually unhealthy. And so this morning I'm going to share God's life-saving ring with you all, and I'm going to throw it out to you. We'll come back to this analogy in a moment. But his life-saving ring is made up of 2 things. And you're going to be so pumped when you hear them, be so excited. Silence and solitude. Silence and solitude. Simple, but yet if I'm right, really tricky and probably not what you want to hear. Because I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, Kristyn, that's not fun. That's too hard. All you're asking me to do is add something extra to my life and add something extra to my to-do list. And to be honest, I think one of the reasons why we find it so difficult and we find it really hard and we don't want that to be the answer is because it's countercultural, isn't it? To to be silent and to find solitude is countercultural. And the reason why is because in life and in our society, we are constantly bombarded with different things to get your attention. Do you know what? I bet you this morning already you've had a notification on your phone. You've probably already looked at your emails that have all pinged. If you're like me and you're part of 1,000 WhatsApp groups, by the way, that is a whole nother sermon series that I would love to talk about, how we could get rid of WhatsApp groups as a parent. You're part of 1,000 WhatsApp groups that have already gone up asking random different things about things that you didn't even know that you needed to know about, and you probably don't need to know about, but now you do know about. You've got your social media notifications. If you're also someone like me, you've got your Bible notification, all pinging, and giving us something to fill our mind with instantly. Do you know, in the Forbes magazine, they say that in a typical day, each person is bombarded with 4,000 to 6,000 different advertisements in one day. And we don't even know it. We think that our phone is listening to us. It's just a lot of advertising that is coming our way. But then it's not just the noise that we haven't asked for. We then go and we buy ourselves these really great things and we pop them in our ears and we're like, I'm just going to make sure that the world is silent now. I'm just going to put my own music on. And so we put them in our ears and we're bombarded with our own music, our own podcasts, our own TV shows. It's just noise. And then we add the pace of life, the rushing to, the going here, the going there, filling up our calendars, because being busy is being seen to be of worth. And I know for a lot of you, this isn't actually brand new information. This is probably something that you do know deep down, and you know it's something that you should and need to add to your life. And so you say these 7 words. You say these 7 words that are so full of hope, but are actually meaningless. And you say, I've just got to get through. I've just got to get through this really busy period. I've just got to get through this really busy week. I've just got to get through this really busy weekend, and then I'll go to work and I'll slow down. Or I've just got to get through whatever you've got to get through. And so the life ring that God offers us of silence and solitude, which is merely about slowing down for God, is really, really hard. So Dallas Willard, a Christian philosopher, he said, silence and solitude are the 2 hardest disciplines to undertake in the Christian life. Now, if you're not yet a Christian or you're exploring faith, then this is also something that God offers to you. It isn't just for those that call God Father, but it is something that He also offers to you, because it is in silence and solitude when we're exploring faith that we get to know God more. And because this is so countercultural, it's actually really hard to put into practice. And so there's kind of 2 ways in which we can put it into practice. There's the easy way or the hard way. The easy way is this morning you take away everything that we learn, you write it down, and you go home and you put it into practice. Easy. The hard way is when you just go, that was really great, I'm just going to keep that in my notes, keep that in my phone, and I'm just going to keep living the way that I'm living, and I'm just going to keep on adding, I'm just going to keep on doing, I'm just going to keep filling my mind with noise. Oh, I've got an opportunity to sit in the car, quickly put a podcast on. Oh, I'm going to go for a run, quickly put my headphones in and go for a run and fill my mind with noise. And then what happens is we just keep going, and then we burn out. We hit exhaustion. And then we are forced to put those 2 things into practice. So you've got 2 options this morning. Which one do you want to choose? You see, burnout is not a modern thing. Burnout is not just something that because of our busy lives and our chaotic lives and all the messages and all the noise that we have in our life that we've created as modern people. No, this is something that even the characters in the Bible dealt with too. And actually, we're going to look at one of those characters this morning. And do you know what? He actually burnt out after doing some amazing things for God. So it wasn't just filling his life with unimportant things. He actually burnt out from doing things from God. And his name was Elijah, and he was doing incredible things for God. This is what he was doing. He took on all of these hundreds of prophets. He was in a standoff with them on Mount Carmel about whose God is bigger. And they're like, prove to us your God is bigger. Prove to us your God is bigger. And that's what he did. And they said, if your God is so big, then we're going to make this altar and we're going to put water and stuff on it so it shouldn't actually go up in flames. But if your God is so big, then he'll be able to do that. And so that's exactly what Elijah did. He called on God and God brought down the fire on something that shouldn't catch on fire, and it did. And he proves that God is alive and powerful. And instead of doing a victory lap and being like, yeah, my God is so powerful, let's take on the world, everyone come and worship my God. No, do you know what he does? Is the guy runs off into the desert. He runs off into the desert. And so this is kind of where we're going to pick up the story now. So Elijah is out in the desert. He's burnt out. He's depleted. He's so depressed. And maybe that is actually where you are this morning. And before we pick up this passage, what we're going to read is what God does first to Elijah is through an angel, he offers him a snack and a sleep. And that is a different sermon and is something that Sam talks about all the time, a snack and a sleep. And maybe right now, if that is where you are so depleted, burnt out, maybe God is saying to you, just have a snack and a sleep. And it's not spiritual words for something else. It is literally go eat something and have a nap. Okay? And maybe that's where you are right now. Okay, so this is where we're going to pick up the story. Elijah is in the desert and he's had a sleep and a snack. So we're going to pick up the story in 1 Kings. And it says this. He said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. You see, God says, go out and wait. Wait for me to be there. He doesn't give him a pep talk, come and say, come on boy, let's go. You've got this. Look at what we just did. Let's keep going. He doesn't also say to Elijah, now just relax for forever. You've done everything that I've called you to do. Just relax. Nor does he say to him, okay, let's add more to your life right now. Let's go do more. Let's go do this and this. No, he says, wait for me. Okay, wait for me. Let's keep reading. So he said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. A sound of sheer silence. Other translations say a gentle whisper. But it's the Hebrew word that they use there is really quite hard to translate into English. But really, the best way to translate it is God is in the sound of silence. God is in the sound of silence. Not in the fire, not in the earthquake, not in the wind, which is where he has spoken before, as we've seen with Moses and Job, but he is in the sound of silence. And in that silence, Elijah is renewed, energized, and has become healthier. God ministers in the silence. God does some of his most powerful ministry in the silence. See, God uses both solitude and silence to minister to Elijah, and that makes Elijah both emotionally healthy and spiritually healthy. And so solitude, let's have a look at it. Solitude is the getting away from people and things. For some of you, that sounds like a dream. For others of us, we're like, ooh. Silence is the discipline of getting away from the inner voice and the outer voices. And they're the things that makes up God's lifesaver ring. You see, with solitude, Elijah goes out into the desert. He goes away from his comforts. He goes away from people and things. But Elijah isn't the only one in the Bible who retreats and goes away. You see, Jesus too practiced this, and he practiced it many different times. We see in Luke that it says, and great multitudes gathered to hear and be healed of their infirmities. We all know that I'm not very good at reading out words, so we all hope that that's the right word. But he withdrew to the wilderness and prayed. He withdrew. Then another example, very early in the morning while it was still dark. So he's just healed all of these people before this passage in Mark. But then very early in the morning, whilst it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. You see, Jesus also demonstrated to us the importance of getting away from people and things and finding time away. He withdrew. When was the last time that you withdrew? When was the last time that you went to a place where you got away from people and things? Or maybe you don't even know where to go. For me, the place in which I love to go to be away from people and things is the beach. And to be early in the morning so there's not so many people around, let's be honest. But to go to the beach and to sit and watch the waves. I know for someone else in my life, the place that they like to go is the golf course. Couldn't think of anything worse in life than the golf course. But it's a spot in which we go and we withdraw. So, where is that spot for you? And if you don't have one and you've never done one, what could be a spot for you that you go to withdraw? Have a think about it. And you may already be thinking, hey, Kristyn, this is already really hard. Do you not know about my life? And the fact of getting away. First of all, I just want to say there is seasons in our life in which it's easier to get away than it is in other seasons. But it doesn't have to be for long. We're not saying it's got to be half a day, an hour, just somewhere that you can go, even if it's for 10, 15 minutes or half an hour, just somewhere that you can go to be away from all of those things. But if you're thinking this one is hard, I'm really sorry to let you know the next one is actually even harder. This series has not been the easiest series, has it? It's been a lot of really good insights, but putting them into practice is actually harder to actually do, isn't it? So as we said, silence is the discipline of getting away from our inner voice and our outer voice, or outer noise. And outer noise is somewhat easier to get rid of. We can just turn things off and we can just be in silence. But it's probably not really silence, is it? Because if you're like me, the inside is working away. And all of a sudden, not just my computer with all of the tabs, I also have all of the tabs in my mind as well. Whether it is reminding myself that I've got to get things for the girls to dance this week and reminding myself, oh, I need that from Woolworths. Or it's don't forget that you've got AHS on Wednesday. It's all open. Do you know that why it is hard for us to quieten our minds is that the average person can actually only cope with 15 seconds of silence. And if you ask the generation behind me how they actually do their homework, they would say that not only do they have their homework, they've got music going and they've probably got some other tab going, the TV may be on at the same time because they can't work out how to do silence. Because silence is scary. And another thing of why I reckon silence is really hard is that we're always told to be productive. We're always told when you've got time, you need to produce something with your time. And to be honest, we're probably asking ourselves when we do have silence, what am I achieving through this? How am I actually being productive with this? And then another reason why maybe we find it hard to quieten our inner minds is because we actually don't want to be left alone in silence. We're worried of what might come up into our mind. The things that we've been trying to push down, the things that we don't actually want to deal with, we know they're going to come up when we have silence. And then another one is probably more like me, is we don't actually know how to stop our inner thoughts. We don't know how to stop the constant talking or the constant reminding of things that are going on in our heads. And so therefore, because we don't know what to do, we just don't do it. You see, with God and silence, He's not asking you to just sit there and be. God knows that it is in silence with Him that it's when our false self, our pretend version of ourselves, is actually stripped away. Now, if you remember back in week 2 of this series, and if you haven't seen it, then make sure you go either on the podcast or on the YouTube channel and watch it. Because in week 2, we talked about David and Goliath and shedding off our false self. Shedding off the things that other people told us we were, shedding off the other things that we believed about ourselves that weren't really for us. And it is actually in silence in which God can do that work. It's done in the silence. But the problem is, we also probably don't stop long enough for God to actually do what he would love to do in our life. Because it's through silence in which we get to fully understand who God has created us to be. And it's not something scary, it is beautiful and wonderful. And so in silence, those things dissolve away. And then we get to bathe in God's love for us. We get to come and sit in his presence. My most favorite verse in the Bible is, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I love you. Be still and know that I see you. Be still and know that I've got you. Be still and know what you've read about me in the word is true. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46, verse 10. The other thing with silence, which all of you who are like to be achievers and want to get things done and wondering if you're actually doing what you're meant to do, let me tell you, silence you cannot fail at. You actually can't fail at it. Even if you're silent literally for 2 seconds, you haven't failed. You've completed. You cannot fail at silence. Because just by coming into God's presence, just by stealing our inner voice and our outer voice, just even in that 2 seconds, we can feel God's love for us. And so maybe if you're not yet a Christian or you're exploring faith, maybe today you've turned up and you're like thinking, I need God's help in my life. I've turned up because I need God's help. I've turned up because I really need to get God's attention. I really need to get something from God this morning. And maybe if you are a Christian, you've also turned up this morning going, God, come on, give me something this morning. I just need something from you this morning. Talk to me, talk to me. You know, the thing with silence and the thing with the Christian life is that we think that it's more about us finding ways for us to get through to God. But actually silence is how we actually hear from God and how we get to be with God. And it's actually through silence that's how God gets through to us. So back to our lifesaver ring analogy, right? So you're out in the water and someone has thrown you the lifesaver ring. And so there is this moment of relief. Oh, yes. And you put it on. I think that's what you do with it, or maybe you hold on to it. Maybe you don't actually fit into it. Maybe I should actually really know. But anyway, you hold on to the thing and you're like, yes. Oh, something to help me. But there is a boat that's over here where the person who's thrown you the lifesaver ring is. But you decide, oh no, the lifesaver ring's enough. I'm just going to keep treading this water, still being okay, but this lifesaver ring has helped me get a little bit of float. And that is just like when we know what God's lifesaver ring is, which is silence and solitude. We know that and we go, yep, I've got that. I'm just going to try it once. I'm just going to do it once. Yep, I should be fine now. I'm so fine. I'm going to go back to my busy life. But don't you think that if you wanted to be rescued from the deep ocean, that just holding onto the lifesaver ring is probably not enough? You kind of want to get into the boat, don't you? And so not all analogies are perfect. Just go with me, okay? And so we hold onto this lifesaver ring because we've done it maybe once or twice, and we hold onto it and go, is that going to be enough? Is that enough? I'm like, it's not as hard, but I am still getting exhausted. I'm still getting tired. And so we go, actually, can you pull me into the boat? I think I want to be in there. Like, I'm still enjoying the water. I'm still enjoying life. I'm still going through the ups and the downs of the ocean, but I'd like to be in there because that seems like actually where I'm meant to be. And so stay with me, we're going to get there. When we actually put in silence and solitude as rhythms in our life, that is when it's like hopping into the boat. That is when the relief of the busyness, the relief of the unrelentlessness, the relief of I've just got to get through ends. when we have got these as rhythms in our life. And so this morning, we are going to start. We're going to practice it now, but we're going to have a moment. Aren't you so excited? I can see your faces. You all look pumped about this. We're going to start now with a little bit of a practice of silence in our life. Because let's be honest, you probably are thinking in your mind, when am I going to fit this in? And we'll come back to that at the end. But we're going to spend a moment just in silence. And I'm going to give you 4 little tips about how to do it, or just like the best practices that I've worked out. And it's just 4 little tips, and I'm just going to quickly go through them. The first one is to pause and take a big deep breath. You can take more than one if that helps you to center yourself. The next one is a phrase. Sometimes if you're like me, you're ready to sit in silence, and then, as I said, all the tabs start coming up in your mind. But having a phrase that you use to center yourself back to God is helpful. So that could be something like my favorite passage, be still and know that I am God. It could simply be Jesus. It could simply be Father. It could simply be, Lord, I'm here. But have something that centers you back to God when your mind wanders. And you may need to use this the whole time because you're training your brain how not to wander, and that is also okay. The third one is posture. Don't be like this, but like get yourself grounded, feet on the ground and ready to be in silence. And then the fourth one is presence. Be ready for God's presence in your life. So we're going to do 2 minutes of silence. And it might feel uncomfortable for some, but it also might be the greatest gift that you have this week. So let's do that now. Take a deep breath. I'd love to know how you found that. I'd love to know if you found that tricky. I'd love to know if you found it peaceful. I'd love to know if your mind was racing with all of the things and how often you needed to use a phrase to bring you back. Also wonder how many of you never realised that there was like little fans going on at church. Yeah. And do you know what? That actually makes me think of God himself, right? We don't know about the fans in church because there's always a lot of fun and noise that is happening, but it's always there. And I think that's just like God, right? Is that we fill our lives with noise, with busyness. And yet God is like, I'm here, I'm ready. God is in the sound of sheer silence. God works through the silence. So maybe you just need to stop and hear from him. And so I want to really encourage you. I think some of us think to ourselves when it comes to the spiritual disciplines that we don't want it to be something that we just add to our to-do list and we tick off. We want it to be something of meaningful and have transformation in our life, right? And so then we go, I'm just not going to schedule it because I want it to be something that just happens. I just happen to be with God. But let's be honest, do you just happen to turn up to the gym? Or do you schedule that? Do you just happen to have a conversation and a coffee and a catch-up and a lunch with a friend? No, we schedule those things. And so when it comes to putting these things as a rhythm in our life, it's going to have to come as something that we schedule, we think through, that we plan. And at first you're going to feel, it's like any new exercise that you do. At first it's going to feel uncomfortable and really contrived. But the more that you do that, the more that you have it as a rhythm in your life, the more it becomes that life-saving ring that helps us get into the boat. That allows us to be emotionally healthy and spiritually healthy as well. So I want you to think now. You can write it down in your phone. You can write it on a piece of paper. You can write it in one of your 100 tabs that are open in your brain about when maybe is the next time you can experiment with silence. When could you put that in this week? When could I add that? And you can start with 2 minutes and just put a timer on your phone and be buzzed out of it when it ends. You can stretch yourself and do 5 minutes. And so we're going to come to now a time of communion, in time in which God knew that we needed rhythms in our life to be able to remind us of the things that keep us connected to him. And communion is that moment in which we have as a rhythm in our service each week for us to be reminded of the love that God has for us, that he sent his one and only Son to die for us that we may be in relationship with him. And so as we come to this time, as we come to reflect on him, and as we have maybe another moment of silence during that, I want you to reflect on the love that God has for you and bask in his love and his glory that he has for you. So let's do that right now. Let's take communion together.